They mocked her, until her war history was revealed. HFY Sci-Fi. The city of Nova Orion never slept. Neon lights flickered along the soaring skyscrapers, and hovercars zipped between platforms high above the streets. The city's heart pulsed with energy, a mixture of human innovation and alien technology. Alara Vin walked among the crowd, her boots making soft sounds on the metal walkway. She carried herself with quiet confidence, though she had learned long ago that confidence did not always earn respect. In fact, in her new life, it often drew skepticism. Alara had left the Interstellar Defense Forces not long ago. Her years in the military were filled with missions that had tested her courage, her mind, and her loyalty to humanity. But in this world of corporate towers and civilian ambition, her accomplishments counted for little. Her new position at a leading technology firm was supposed to be a fresh start, yet she already felt the weight of judgment from those around her. Her coworkers were a mix of humans and aliens, each with their own ambitions and ideas about who deserved to lead. In her first week, she had encountered snickers behind her back, whispered jokes about her quiet manner, and outright dismissive comments during meetings. Some called her too serious, while others said she didn't know enough to contribute. Alara said nothing, keeping her composure. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than words. Her office was a sleek, minimalist space with a wide viewport overlooking the city. She placed her bag down and began organizing her notes for the day. The room smelled faintly of metal and ozone, a side effect of the tech company's proximity to experimental labs. Outside, the skyline glittered like a field of stars, but inside, tension lingered. Alara had learned to navigate both worlds, the brilliance of innovation and the petty judgments of those who could not see beyond appearances. Her first task of the day was simple: review the schematics for a new type of energy core. It was a promising design, meant to revolutionize interstellar travel by reducing energy consumption by half. Alara knew enough to understand the theory and enough experience to anticipate the flaws. Yet, when she made her first suggestion in the team meeting, a young engineer named Tharic laughed. "You're talking like you understand this, but you just arrived," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Do you even know how these cores operate in a real starship?" Alara's eyes met his calmly. "I've seen similar systems in action," she replied. Her voice was steady, her tone neutral. "Some of the issues I'm pointing out could prevent overheating under high stress." Tharic scoffed and waved his hand. "We'll see. Maybe you're lucky." The rest of the team snickered quietly. Alara did not respond further. She had faced ridicule far harsher than this, and she had learned that the right moment to speak was not always the first moment someone challenged you. After the meeting, Alara returned to her desk. The office hummed with the sound of machinery and quiet conversation. She glanced at the holographic screen in front of her and began simulations to test her suggestions. Every calculation, every adjustment, confirmed what she had suspected. The new energy core design needed minor modifications, but ignoring them could lead to significant failure under extreme conditions. She made notes, detailing each step clearly, and prepared to present them in a follow-up meeting. Still, the shadow of judgment lingered. Alara remembered the faces from the morning, the disbelief, the subtle smirks, the quiet questions in their eyes about why she was even there. She reminded herself that appearances often deceived. Humans had a tendency to underestimate, and Alara had learned to use that underestimation to her advantage. It had been a lesson she learned on the battlefield, in places where lives depended on strategy, patience, and subtlety. Lunch came, and the cafeteria was crowded with chatter. Aliens with bioluminescent skin shared tables with humans in suits. Conversations bounced between technical theories, corporate gossip, and personal stories. Alara chose a quiet table near the window, keeping her tray simple: nutrient bars, a small portion of vegetables, and water. She ate slowly, observing. Observing was one of her strengths. Every gesture, every glance, every word could provide information if one paid attention. As she ate, a group of coworkers approached her table. "Mind if we join?" one asked, his tone almost polite, but Alara noticed the faint edge of mockery in his voice. "Of course," she said softly, gesturing to the empty seats. They sat and the conversation began. At first it was small talk, comments about the weather in Nova Orion, the latest shipment of alien tech, office events. Then, inevitably, the discussion turned toward her. "So, Alara," Theric began again, a mischievous grin on his face, "what exactly did you do before you joined us? You don't seem seasoned enough to handle these projects." Alara remained calm. "I worked in operations and logistics," she said. "I've managed large teams and complex systems under pressure." "Operations, that's just coordination," Theric said, rolling his eyes. "Not like actual leadership, not like combat experience or real decision-making. You probably just followed orders." A few others laughed. Alara felt the familiar tug of irritation, but she did not show it. She had learned that revealing anger or frustration in these moments only fueled their amusement. Instead, she took a slow sip of water and nodded. "Perhaps," she said softly. "But even coordination can save lives if done correctly." Her words hung in the air, too calm to provoke but too firm to ignore. The group exchanged awkward glances and eventually moved on to other topics, leaving Alara alone again. She allowed herself a small, private smile. Patience, timing was everything. The rest of the afternoon passed in a similar rhythm. Alara reviewed designs, made adjustments, and sent reports to the engineering team. Occasionally, a coworker would glance at her screen, raising an eyebrow as if surprised by her precision. She ignored the looks, focusing on the work. Each calculation, each note, was a silent demonstration of her knowledge and experience. As the day drew to a close, the city outside began to glow in the early evening light. Hovercars left streaks of color across the sky, and the bustling streets below hummed with energy. Alara stepped onto the balcony outside her office, taking a deep breath. She could feel the pulse of the city, the mixture of excitement and tension. It reminded her of deployments in distant systems, where every day brought new challenges and every decision carried weight. A notification pinged on her communicator. It was a message from her former unit. A reminder that even though she had left the IDF, the galaxy was still full of challenges that demanded courage, skill, and strategy. She glanced at the message, then at the city below. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember the battles she had fought, the missions she had led, and the people she had saved. Then she let it go. This was a different kind of battlefield, but the lessons remained the same. Returning to her desk, Alara began planning for the next day. She would present her detailed findings to the project lead, not to prove herself to those who mocked her, but to ensure the safety and success of the project. Her past might remain hidden for now, but her abilities spoke louder than any title. Still, she could feel the undercurrent of skepticism in the office. They mocked her, underestimated her, assumed she was inexperienced, and that was exactly how she wanted it. When the time came, she would show them that strength, intelligence, and courage were not always visible at first glance. Until then, she would work quietly, observe, and prepare. As the sun set over Nova Orion, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, Alara stood at her window one last time. The city was alive with possibility, and somewhere in its heart, a challenge awaited that would demand everything she had learned in the past. She didn't yet know what it would be, but she knew one thing. When the time came, the mockery would end. And when it did, no one would forget her name. The night grew deep, the city lights twinkled like stars, and Alara returned to her work. She plotted coordinates, analyzed schematics, and double-checked calculations. Every step she took was quiet, deliberate, and precise. In a world that dismissed her, she moved like a shadow of competence, unseen but unstoppable. And somewhere in the distance, the first signs of a challenge began to stir, a whisper of danger that would test her resolve and reveal the truth about the woman they had mocked. Alara Ven smiled faintly to herself. She was ready. The alarm blared across Nova Orion, cutting through the city's usual hum of machinery and hovercars. Red lights flashed on every tower, casting sharp shadows on the bustling streets below. Citizens froze mid-step, glancing skyward as sirens wailed. Alara Ven, already reviewing reports in her office, stiffened. This was not a drill. The city's defense network had detected an approaching fleet. Not human, not like any alien she had studied in books or training, but something far more organized and dangerous. The Virith, a nomadic species known for sudden, calculated attacks, were heading toward the colony. Panic was spreading in the city like wildfire. Messages flooded in from authorities and civilians alike. Many were frightened, unprepared, and unsure where to turn. Alara's first instinct was action. She moved quickly to the command center on the top floor, where city officials and security teams had already gathered. Engineers and officers scrambled to access real-time data on the approaching ships. Panic whispered in the corridors, but Alara's presence was a calm counterpoint. "What do we know?" she asked, stepping forward. Her voice was quiet but carried authority. A few officers turned to look at her, some with skepticism. They knew her as a tech analyst, not a military strategist. "The Virith fleet is larger than expected," one officer said. "They're coordinating maneuvers in patterns we haven't seen before. Our defense systems may not be enough." Alara studied the holographic display floating between them. Ships of alien design glimmered in the void of space, moving with precision and speed. Her mind raced, calculating trajectories, predicting outcomes. Even the best city defenses could be overwhelmed if the fleet reached the main settlement. "They'll hit the northern sectors first," she said, pointing at the projected path. "If we don't reinforce those zones, civilian casualties could be significant." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some officers looked doubtful. "Who gave you clearance to make that call?" one demanded. Alara met his gaze steadily. "I'm giving advice. The city council and defense teams can act on it or not, but someone has to make the decisions quickly." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a senior commander nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Very well, we'll follow your assessment. Coordinate the evacuation and defense." With that, Alara moved swiftly. She accessed communication channels, sending alerts to automated security drones, civilian transport units, and emergency shelters. She instructed ground teams to prioritize critical infrastructure, ensuring hospitals, energy stations, and command hubs were protected. Her mind worked like a machine, each decision precise, calculated, and efficient. Outside, the city's inhabitants were beginning to panic. Hovercars screeched to sudden stops as drivers tried to find safe zones. Citizens shouted at one another, unsure of what to do. Alara's voice came through emergency broadcast channels, calm and clear. "Remain calm. Evacuation routes are open. Follow instructions from city officials and security personnel. Move swiftly but safely." Even amid the chaos, people responded. Alara had a way of making her voice carry authority without sounding harsh. She had learned that in crises, clear communication saved lives. In the military, she had done it countless times, guiding squads through firestorms and ambushes. Now her experience applied to civilians and city defense teams. As evacuation convoys moved, Alara turned her attention to the Virith fleet. Their patterns were deliberate, coordinated, and disturbingly intelligent. It reminded her of battle simulations she had run during her IDF training, except this was no simulation. Real lives were at stake, and any mistake could be fatal. She traced the fleet's movement, marking projected landing points. "We can't match their speed," she told her team. "But we can predict their maneuvers. If we set traps along their path, we can disrupt their formation and minimize damage. Some of the engineers looked incredulous. Traps? You mean ambushes? This is a city defense scenario, not a battlefield. Alara's gaze didn't waver. Every battle, civilian or military, requires strategy. The Virith don't expect resistance organized with intelligence. We will make them hesitate, and hesitation will give our people a chance to survive. With that, she organized teams, assigning each to specific tasks. Some focused on redirecting drones for defense, others reinforced shields around vital structures, and volunteers moved to assist civilians to shelters. Alara moved among them, offering guidance and calm words. Her presence was steady, a beacon of control amid chaos. Time passed in a blur. Reports came in of small skirmishes near the outer perimeter. Virith ships hovered over energy depots, attempting to disable power systems. Alara instructed drone swarms to intercept, timing their strikes to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's formations. Each calculated maneuver succeeded, reducing potential damage and buying crucial time. Meanwhile, Theric, the same co-worker who had mocked her in the office, arrived at the command center. His expression shifted from arrogance to shock as he watched her coordinate the response. How do you know all this?" he asked, incredulous. Alara glanced at him briefly, her expression calm. Experience, observation, analysis, all three are necessary when lives are at stake, he frowned. Experience? What kind of experience? You never mentioned. Alara didn't answer. Not yet. This was not the time to reveal her past. Right now, every decision had to be focused on survival. The battle escalated as the Virith fleet made their first major strike. A wave of ships descended on the northern sectors, attempting to breach energy nodes and communication hubs. Alara predicted the pattern and directed drone formations to intercept. Explosions lit up the sky, but casualties were minimized. Civilians watched from safe zones, some whispering in awe at the unseen force guiding the defense. Her phone buzzed with incoming reports. "Northern sector stable," she said calmly, reviewing data. "Secondary strikes are less coordinated. They will adjust soon. Prepare for a countermeasure." Alara tapped into citywide systems, using automated transport to redirect supplies and emergency personnel to critical points. She calculated response times, predicted enemy movement, and adjusted defenses with remarkable precision. It was like conducting a symphony, each action deliberate and coordinated. In the control room, some officers began to murmur among themselves. "Who is she?" one whispered. "Where did she get this knowledge?" Alara moved to the central console, analyzing real-time feedback from drones and security units. She noticed patterns in the Virith fleet, repeated maneuvers, slight weaknesses in formation, predictable timing. It was enough. "We have an opening," she said, her tone steady. "If we concentrate drone swarms at these points and reinforce shields here, we can force them to retreat or risk losing significant ships. Timing is critical. Act now." Orders were relayed, and drones surged into action. The Virith ships encountered unexpected resistance, their precise maneuvers thrown off by the coordinated counterattack. Explosions lit the horizon as drones collided with enemy craft, disrupting formation and forcing the fleet to pull back temporarily. Alara watched the screens carefully. Relief did not yet enter her mind. The fleet was still dangerous, and the fight was far from over. But she allowed herself a small acknowledgement that her calculations had worked. Theric approached again, his skepticism replaced by cautious respect. You knew exactly what to do," he said. "How?" Alara paused, her eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. "Preparation and understanding," she said. "Every enemy has a pattern. Every threat has weaknesses. The key is patience, observation, and decisive action." Even as she spoke, she continued to analyze incoming data, guiding the defense teams and adjusting strategies. Her coworkers could see it now. The calm authority, the intelligence, and the skill. The same people who had mocked her in the office were now following her lead, taking orders without question, relying on her expertise. The Virith fleet attempted a final maneuver, seeking to flank the city from multiple angles. Alara anticipated the move and rerouted drone squads to counter. The fleet's advance faltered, forcing them to retreat once more. Civilians cheered from safe zones, their fear giving way to cautious hope. For a moment, the command center was quiet. Officers exchanged glances, realizing that the person they had underestimated was not only competent but extraordinary. Alara remained focused, monitoring the skies and city systems, ensuring the retreat continued without further loss. Finally, after hours of tension, the Virith fleet pulled back beyond detection range. The city was safe, for now. Exhausted teams leaned against consoles, their faces a mix of relief and disbelief. Alara stepped back, her posture relaxed but alert. The battle had revealed something essential. Human resilience and intelligence were forces to be reckoned with. Theric approached her one last time, his voice quieter now, lacking the usual arrogance. I didn't realize. You saved the city. How did we not know who you were?" Alara looked at him with a small, calm smile. "People often see what they expect to see," she said softly. "Sometimes it takes a crisis to show who someone really is." Her words hung in the air. The command center was no longer a place of doubt. It was a place of respect. Her coworkers and even some skeptical officers now saw her in a new light. The quiet analyst had become the orchestrator of survival, and no one could dismiss her skill or judgment any longer. As night fell over Nova Orion, Alara stepped onto the balcony of the command center. The city below glowed softly, the neon lights reflecting off the metal towers. People were safe, thanks to her guidance, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Virith were clever, and they might return. Preparation and vigilance would always be necessary. Alara's mind drifted briefly to her past, missions she had led, decisions that had saved entire fleets, and the lessons learned in faraway systems. Here, in a civilian city, those lessons mattered just as much. And while her coworkers still did not know the full extent of her war history, that would come in time. For now, action had spoken louder than words. The night was quiet, but in the distance, she felt the whisper of future challenges. And Alara Ven, the woman once mocked for her quiet demeanor, was ready. The city had seen her abilities today, and when the time came, the truth of her past would astonish them even more. For now she allowed herself a moment of calm, knowing that humans, resilient, clever, and determined, could rise to any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. And Alara would continue to guide them, quietly, strategically, and with unwavering resolve. The city had quieted, but the tension remained thick. Emergency lights glowed dimly, casting long shadows across the control center. Alara Ven did not sit. Her eyes scanned the data streams, analyzing every signal from the retreating Virith fleet. While the immediate danger had passed, she knew better than to assume it was over. The Virith were not merely aggressive, they were cunning. They would adapt, and they would return if they thought victory possible. Her coworkers lingered nearby, some leaning against consoles, exhausted but curious. Many of them had seen her in action today, coordinating defenses, predicting enemy movements, and directing teams with precision that seemed almost uncanny. Whispers traveled through the room. "Who is she really?" one muttered. "Where did she learn all this?" Theric, still stunned, approached her. "Alara, I have to ask, you predicted everything, every maneuver, every mistake they made. How? Were you trained like this?" Alara remained calm, her expression neutral, but her gaze sharpened. She could feel the curiosity and doubt in their eyes, the need for answers that she had long denied. "I've seen battles before," she said quietly, measuring her words. "I've led teams in situations like this." You can learn a lot by observing patterns, understanding psychology, and planning for every outcome. Theric hesitated. Wait, led teams. You mean military? Alara let the words hang. The room seemed to tighten in anticipation. Coworkers exchanged glances, their fatigue mixing with intrigue. Some faces betrayed admiration, others disbelief. The quiet woman they had underestimated was not what she seemed. Yes, Alara admitted, her tone steady. I served in the Interstellar Defense Forces. I commanded a unit that faced impossible odds on multiple occasions. I've been responsible for strategies that saved thousands of lives. The reaction was instantaneous. A murmur rose through the room, disbelief mixing with awe. One of the senior officers who had previously doubted her stepped forward. You're the Alara Ven, the tactician in the Orion skirmishes, Alara nodded. That's right, but today it doesn't matter what my title was or what I achieved. What matters is that we protected the city. That is why I acted, and why I will continue to act if necessary. Silence followed her words. The room had shifted. Skepticism and mockery had been replaced by respect and a growing sense of humility. The coworkers who had whispered, laughed, and doubted her just hours before now looked at her differently. They saw the person she truly was, intelligent, courageous, and capable of extraordinary leadership. The city council arrived shortly after, reviewing the reports and the outcomes of the emergency response. Officials congratulated her, praising her quick thinking and decisive actions. Alara accepted their words with quiet grace, knowing that accolades were secondary to the lives saved and the people protected. Yet the Virith fleet was still in space, distant but not gone. Alara returned her focus to the data streams. She traced their retreat path and examined communications intelligence, searching for any sign of continued aggression. Patterns emerged, small but noticeable, indicating that the aliens were analyzing their failure, learning from the encounter, and preparing for a return. She gathered her team in the control room. They will likely come back, she said calmly, and when they do, we must be ready. Our first engagement was defensive, but next time we can anticipate their moves and act proactively. Strategy will be our greatest weapon. Theric's eyes widened. You mean you want to go on the offensive? Against them here, Alara nodded. Yes, if we allow them to strike again without preparation, lives will be lost. But with planning, coordination, and decisive action, we can control the outcome. That is how battles are won, whether on a battlefield or in a city. The room was silent again, but this time it was filled with respect, not doubt. Even those who had mocked her now listened intently, eager to learn and follow her guidance. Alara had proven herself not through boasting or displays of ego, but through competence, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. As she prepared for the next phase, Alara reflected on the lessons she had learned over the years. Leadership was not about authority alone. It was about observation, adaptation, and trust. A leader must understand the strengths and weaknesses of their team, anticipate threats, and act when the time was right. And most importantly, a leader must remain calm when others panic. Even as her mind worked through simulations and strategies, Alara could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She had faced impossible odds before, but each situation was unique. The Virith were intelligent, fast, and relentless. They would test every decision she made, but she welcomed the challenge. Humanity, in her eyes, had a unique resilience and ingenuity that could overcome even the most formidable foes. Hours passed as Alara coordinated teams, analyzed data, and prepared defenses. The city's emergency protocols were upgraded, new evacuation routes were established, and drone deployments were refined. Volunteers and security personnel were trained to respond quickly and efficiently. Alara moved among them, demonstrating maneuvers, explaining tactics, and instilling confidence. Her presence was calm but authoritative, a steadying force amid lingering fear. By the time the city's night cycle fully settled in, Alara had not rested. Her mind remained alert, scanning for anomalies and predicting potential threats. She had briefed every team, anticipated likely attack patterns, and prepared countermeasures. Yet, even in the midst of preparation, she knew something crucial. The final test would not only prove her strategic genius but also reveal the full extent of her past to those who had doubted her. The next day, as the V-Rith returned in force, the city was ready. Drones, shields, and defensive formations moved with precision. Civilians were secure in shelters, and emergency personnel were deployed strategically. Alara's mind calculated probabilities, predicted enemy maneuvers, and issued commands with exact timing. The battle began with a sudden, coordinated strike by the V-Rith. Ships swooped in from multiple directions, attempting to breach the city's outer defenses. The first wave was met with Alara's countermeasures, and drones intercepted with unexpected efficiency. The aliens faltered, their maneuvers disrupted, and their coordination thrown off balance. Theric watched in disbelief. "I don't understand," he said aloud. "No one should be able to predict them like this." Alara's voice was calm as she replied, "Patterns exist. Every opponent has them. You only need to observe carefully, anticipate, and act decisively." The V-Rith adjusted, trying new tactics, but Alara anticipated these as well. Her knowledge of strategy, drawn from years in combat, allowed her to stay one step ahead. She directed counterattacks, reinforced weak points, and ensured that civilians remained safe. The control room became a hub of orchestrated defense, every team member moving under her guidance. Then came the critical moment. The V-Rith attempted a flanking maneuver, concentrating their forces on a vulnerable sector. Alara's eyes narrowed. She had predicted this. With a calm precision, she issued a series of commands that redirected drone swarms, reinforced shields, and created a trap for the advancing fleet. Explosions lit the night sky as the V-Rith fell into her plan. Ships collided, formations broke, and retreat signals were sent. Civilians watched from shelters, astonished by the apparent mastery of the unseen commander guiding their safety. At last, the battle reached its conclusion. The V-Rith fleet, battered and confused, pulled back into deep space. Nova Orion had survived. The control room erupted in quiet celebration, relief washing over the exhausted personnel. Alara, however, remained composed, her mind already scanning for any residual threats. Theric stepped forward, all replacing disbelief. "Alara, I think I understand now. You weren't just lucky. You were trained, experienced, you're a hero." Alara looked at him with a faint smile. "I didn't act for recognition. I acted because it was necessary. Strategy and skill are tools to protect lives, not to gain praise." Then, for the first time in the presence of her coworkers and city officials, Alara began to recount her full history. She spoke of the Orion skirmishes, of missions in which she led small units to achieve impossible objectives, of strategies that had turned the tide in countless engagements. Screens displayed her commendations, her rank, and records of the lives saved under her command. The room went silent. Coworkers who had mocked her stared, mouths open. Officers who had doubted her now bowed their heads in respect. Even Theric seemed speechless, absorbing the reality of her past. The quiet, reserved woman they had dismissed as inexperienced had been a hero in battles spanning systems, a tactician whose intellect and courage had saved thousands. Alara concluded her story, her tone steady but firm. Today was only a small reflection of what humans are capable of. We are resilient, intelligent, and determined, and even when underestimated, we rise to the challenge. The revelation changed everything. Mockery and doubt were replaced with admiration and trust. The city officials offered her a permanent advisory position, while her coworkers now looked to her for guidance. For Alara, The acknowledgement was not the reward. Protecting lives and demonstrating humanity's strength was enough. As the city settled into quiet once more, Alara stood at the balcony, watching the lights of Nova Orion. The battle was won, but she knew vigilance would always be necessary. And now, those who had doubted her not only respected her, they had witnessed the proof of her exceptional abilities. The woman they mocked had become a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and courage. And Alara then knew that when the next challenge came, she and humanity would be ready. The morning after the V-Rith retreat was quiet, almost surreal. Nova Orion was alive with activity, but the tension that had gripped the city only a day before had eased. Citizens moved about the streets with cautious optimism, repairing damages, checking on neighbors, and marveling at the efficiency of the emergency response. Alara then walked through the city center, observing quietly. The aftermath of battle was always revealing, not just in what was broken, but in how people responded, how they adapted, and how they worked together. Her coworkers had gathered in the command center earlier, and the mood was markedly different. Where there had once been doubt, skepticism, and mockery, now there was respect, curiosity, and eagerness to learn. Officers and engineers alike asked questions, not about her, but about tactics, strategies, and the lessons learned from the V-Rith engagement. Alara guided them patiently, explaining her reasoning, showing simulations, and demonstrating how observation and preparation could transform outcomes. "Your predictions were flawless," Tharic said, his voice carrying both awe and humility. "How did you do it?" Alara smiled faintly. "It's not flawless. No plan is, but knowledge, observation, and thinking ahead make a difference. You apply what you know, adjust when needed, and keep people safe. That is all it takes." She moved among the teams, offering advice and encouragement. She knew that respect could not be demanded, it was earned. And in the hours following the battle, she saw that respect growing naturally. The engineers and officers had begun to understand that she was not simply reacting to events. She had been planning, calculating, and preparing every step in advance. Outside, repair crews worked efficiently, guided by drones and automated systems she had helped deploy. Civilians assisted wherever they could, moving debris, delivering supplies, and supporting each other. Alara watched the scene, reminded once more of humanity's resilience. People adapted, innovated, and rose to challenges that seemed impossible. That was the essence of what she had always believed. Humans could survive, even thrive, when faced with overwhelming odds. Later, the city council convened a formal debrief. Officials, military advisors, and civilian leaders gathered to assess the V-Rith attack, review the responses, and prepare for future threats. Alara stood at the front, her posture calm but authoritative. She presented her analysis of the fleet's tactics, the effectiveness of the defensive maneuvers, and the areas where the city could improve. She also highlighted the critical role of coordination, planning, and human ingenuity. "What you demonstrated," one council member said, voice carrying admiration, "is extraordinary. Not just your skill, but your ability to lead, guide, and inspire. Nova Orion owes a great debt to you." Alara inclined her head. "I did what was necessary." The credit belongs to everyone who followed instructions, worked diligently, and kept civilians safe. This city is strong because its people are capable and courageous. After the council meeting, she took a quiet walk through one of the city's observation decks. From here, the full scale of the city was visible, the energy cores humming, the towers shining, and the people moving with purpose. Alara reflected on what had happened. The V-Rith had tested the city, and she had guided the defense. But more than that, she had shown her co-workers and the council what humans were truly capable. Strategy, intelligence, and courage could overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. Her thoughts turned to her colleagues. The ones who had mocked her, doubted her, and whispered behind her back, now they had witnessed her abilities firsthand. Respect had replaced derision, and in some cases, awe. She knew that their perception of her would remain changed forever. That was not her goal. It was simply the natural consequence of competence in action. Alara returned to the command center to check on the remaining systems. Engineers were running diagnostics, ensuring that no hidden damage remained. Drone formations were being repositioned for long-term security, and emergency protocols were being updated with lessons learned from the battle. Alara's eyes scanned the reports, noting every detail, every improvement that could be made. Preparation was ongoing. She had learned that threats could never be fully eliminated, only mitigated. Theric approached again, a new determination in his eyes. "I want to learn from you," he said. "Not just about tactics, but about leadership. About thinking ahead, seeing patterns, staying calm under pressure. I want to be someone who can help, not just follow orders." Alara regarded him thoughtfully. "Leadership isn't about titles or orders," she said. "It's about responsibility, awareness, and the courage to act when needed. If you commit to learning and observing, you can contribute meaningfully. That is how any of us become stronger together." She spent the next hours mentoring teams, running simulations, and refining strategies. Every instruction she gave was practical and actionable, ensuring that those who had never faced a crisis before were better prepared for the future. Her patience was remarkable. She knew that knowledge shared and skills taught would create more capable defenders of the city than any single hero could be. By evening, the city had returned to a semblance of normalcy. Streets were busy with civilians, repair drones, and volunteers. Shops reopened, and families reunited. Yet beneath the surface, the memory of the Vrith attack lingered, a reminder of the fragility of safety and the importance of preparation. Alara stood on a balcony overlooking the city, the lights shimmering like stars across the towers. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the city had survived, that people had endured, and that humanity had once again proven its resilience. She thought of her past, the battles she had fought in distant systems, the lives she had saved, and the strategies that had worked countless times. Here, in Nova Orion, the principles were the same. Courage, intelligence, patience, and coordination could overcome even the most advanced threats. And when humans were underestimated, they could rise with even greater force, surprising those who doubted them. A group of young engineers approached, hesitant but eager. "Captain Venn," one began, "would you show us some of your strategies? Teach us how to think like you?" Alara smiled. "I can show you the principles," she said. "Observation, anticipation, and decisive action. The rest comes with experience. Remember, mistakes are lessons, not failures. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to learn." They listened intently as she demonstrated, running simulations and explaining her reasoning step by step. For the first time, they understood not just the tactics, but the mindset required to respond effectively under pressure. Alara's presence inspired them. They were no longer just co-workers or civilians. They were part of a human system capable of extraordinary adaptability and resilience. As night deepened, Alara took a moment alone. The city was quiet now, save for the soft hum of distant hovercars and the occasional flicker of neon lights. She thought about the Vrith, the battle, and the future. Humanity's strength was not in any single person, she reflected, but in the ability of many to work together, to think, to adapt, and to act when necessary. She had been underestimated, mocked, and dismissed, but those moments had only strengthened her resolve. The city had seen her skills, her strategy, and her courage. They had witnessed what humans could achieve when faced with impossible odds, and Alara knew that this was only the beginning. There would be future threats, future challenges, but humans would face them with intelligence, determination, and unity. She returned to the command center one last time that night, reviewing final reports, confirming that the city's systems were secure, and ensuring that all teams were accounted for. Every detail mattered, every life mattered. Alara had learned over the years that small errors could have enormous consequences. Vigilance, precision, and responsibility were never optional. When she finally stepped onto the balcony again, she looked out over Nova Orion with quiet pride. The city sparkled beneath the stars, a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. People were safe, systems were secure, and the lessons of the battle had been learned. Alara knew that she had not only protected the city, but also inspired those around her to believe in themselves and in humanity's potential. She allowed herself a small smile. The mockery, the doubts, the skepticism, they were all gone now. In their place was respect, admiration, and understanding. But more importantly, the city had seen what she had always known, that humans, even when underestimated, could rise to any challenge, protect each other, and achieve greatness against impossible odds. Alara then stood there for a long while, the lights of Nova Orion reflecting in her eyes. She thought of the lives saved, the strategies executed, and the minds inspired. She thought of the lessons yet to teach and the challenges yet to face. And she knew, with certainty, that humanity was capable of remarkable things. The city slept safely beneath the stars, and for the first time in many days, Alara allowed herself a moment of peace. The future would bring new threats, new battles, and new tests, but Nova Orion and humanity itself would endure. And when they did, they would endure stronger, smarter, and united. Alara's gaze lingered on the horizon. Somewhere in the depths of space, the Vrith may be regrouping, planning, and learning. But humans would also be ready. Strategy, intelligence, courage, and unity would guide them. And Alara, once mocked and underestimated, would continue to lead, teach, and inspire. A living testament to what humans could achieve when they refused to give up, refused to be dismissed, and refused to yield to fear. The city glowed beneath her, and in that light Alara saw the reflection of humanity itself, resilient, brilliant, and unstoppable.